Is it possible to save money sewing your own clothing and other items, or is it actually less expensive to purchase the items ready-made? I have heard many people argue that it is less expensive to make the items yourself or to get Aunt so-and-so to make them. I have also heard many people argue that it is actually more expensive to make the items yourself rather than purchasing ready-made. There seems to be some discrepancy here. So which is it? Is it worth it to make your own items, or is it not? My answer to this question in a single sentence is yes, no, maybe. It depends. Whatever we are discussing, be it sewing clothing, making food from scratch, doing home renovation projects yourself, or having someone else do it for you, which is going to be the more expensive option cannot be answered in a single sentence because there are so many factors involved. I've been making my own clothing and other items for several years now, and I've figured out a few methods that help me to be able to do that on a tight budget. It's important to note that these are things that I do and they may not be helpful for everyone. It depends on three main things: what, where, and how. Beginning with the what. What sort of sewing am I doing? Having a focus is really important, and that is coming from someone who really struggles with focus. I did not say this would be easy. It's very difficult. Focus. Yes, it's very important to have a focus. What am I making? Costumes, clothing, home decor, everyday wear, formal wear, kids' clothes. What is my focus right now? This will help me to determine what types of fabrics, yardage, embellishments, and notions that I will be looking for and which things I should forego. Right now, I'm personally focusing on clothing for myself, so I am mostly looking for fabrics that I am comfortable wearing. Cotton, linen, wool, sometimes rayon. I don't feel so comfortable in polyester or nylon, so even if it is a really lovely fabric, I usually don't get it because I know I won't be comfortable wearing it, so I will spend the time and the money on this, and I won't get any use out of it. On the other hand, if it is a cotton or linen fabric, but I don't like the color or the print, I also won't get it because I have to like the whole of it, not just part of it. If I do see some fantastic polyester fabric that I can't find anywhere else at that price, and I have a plan for it, say for a costume that I was wanting to do, I might indulge in that, but that's a side quest, and then I'll bring myself back to my focus. Next is the where. The area you live in, the shops you have available to you. The shops that are within a reasonable distance of me are Walmart, thrift stores, and Joann Fabrics. I think it's fairly safe to say that it is very difficult, near impossible, to save money shopping for fabric at Joann Fabrics. I will sometimes purchase buttons or zippers there, and it is where I get my thread when it's on sale, and they do have sales fairly often, which is very helpful. But it has been a long time since I've purchased fabric there. It does seem to be a much better option for me to shop at my local thrift store for fabric. For example, the last item I made was a tiered skirt, and it cost me $4 for 3.5 yards. I did a quick price check of some similar fabric at Joann's, and it is currently on sale for $9 per yard. So to purchase 3.5 yards would cost me $31.50. That's a pretty significant difference. But of course, not all thrift stores are the same. Prices are going to vary with each store. My local thrift store doesn't always have the lowest prices of everything, but in terms of, say, bed sheets, they seem to. A single flat bed sheet at my local thrift store costs $2 to $3 right now. The second closest thrift store to me sells their flat bed sheets for $7 to $10 right now. Pricing is going to be different, and availability is also not going to be the same everywhere. I am very fortunate that my local thrift store has a fabric and craft section because not all thrift stores do. And finally, the how. How you do it. There's a method to this madness. Investment and currency. It's important to me to view sewing as an investment. With every purchase, I always ask myself, is this a good investment? It's also important to me to remember that money is not the only currency. There is money, time, the mental effort, and the mental space, the physical effort, and the physical space. Those are my currencies. Those are the things that I will be able to spend. When deciding to purchase or not to purchase, I like to review with myself, what type of currency will I be using here? And is it going to be worth it to me? For example, I found this 100% cotton tablecloth at the thrift store for $4. I didn't have a need for a tablecloth, but I did need some dish towels, so I cut it up into 12 sections and made 12 towels. Each towel was then about 33 cents a piece, but I did spend about 20 minutes making each towel. And let's say I have a job that pays me $15 an hour. To be compensated for my time for those towels, I would have to say that it was $60 worth of my time. Of course, I could have gone to my job, worked the 4 hours, and then simply purchased some towels, which seemed to cost anywhere from $3 to $8. So I could possibly purchase 12 towels for $36. The question is, what is worth it to me? To make the towels, spend $4 of money and $60 worth of my time, or go to work, spend 4 hours of my time and $36 of my money. I know in the second scenario, I would have $24 and 12 towels. In the first scenario, I would only have 12 towels. But it's important to me to take into consideration that working outside of the home is very taxing to me, so those 4 hours are a little more like 8 hours to me. So I might end up with more dollars, but I will be spending more mental and physical energy. So personally, for me, it is more worth it to make the towels. Patience and planning. One of the best things someone on a tight budget can do is to look ahead, to plan ahead. Shop the clearance items, the out of season items, keeping a lookout for things that fit into your plan and build up your supplies over time. Now, some people might give you grief over having a stash or a hoard, as some like to call it. I've witnessed some people sharing that they don't have a stash. If they want to make something, they go out, they buy the supplies, they bring them home, and they make the thing. They don't store anything. And that sounds fantastic. If they're able to do that, that's great. The truth is, not everyone is able to purchase supplies brand new or even purchase the supplies all at once. Take this dress, for example. I purchased the supplies for this dress from the thrift store. I collected the fabric and trim for about a year before I had enough to make the dress. It ended up costing me under $15, and it's one of my favorite dresses. I wouldn't have been able to make it if I had to purchase the items at a fabric store. I wasn't even able to spend $15 on the supplies all at once. It was over time because I only had a few dollars that I could spare over the course of a year. There are pros and cons with both options. With no stash sewing, you'll have to spend more money, but you're able to take it home and right away get to work while the inspiration and the motivation is still flowing, and you won't have to store the items. Sewing by building up the supplies over time, by finding good deals, you will be able to save money, but you won't necessarily keep hold of that motivation and that inspiration, and you will have to store the items. So that's taking up some physical and mental space. So pros and cons with both options. The goal is to figure out what works best for you, not what works best for someone else. Shopping. I like to shop mostly at the thrift store. Usually the prices are better, but occasionally I have found better prices on the clearance aisle in Walmart. A complete set bedsheet at my local thrift store is about $9 right now, and I have found them for $7 at Walmart. And a bedsheet is a wonderful thing to use as a bedsheet or to make any number of things. My duvet cover was actually originally a bedsheet set from the thrift store. So I like to check the Walmart clearance aisle and see if there's anything helpful there, but I mainly like to shop at the thrift store. Areas in the thrift stores. I like to check the craft section, the fabric, the notions, and the tools. Then there's the clearance rack. Clothing items usually get discounted to $1. This is where I search for linens on sale, but also clothing that I can purchase as is, or that I can modify a little bit to fit my style. I also search through the linens, the curtains, blankets, tablecloths, runners, napkins, etc. When looking through the fabric, I always check for stains and holes. I take it over near a window and use the natural light, and I check to see if the fabric is cut in one piece or in sections. If the yardage and width is the same as what it says on the label, it's very disappointing to spend your hard-earned money and then discover that you can't use it for what you had planned. So I always check the fabric. And I also check the fiber content by feeling it. I do not conduct burn tests in store. It is frowned upon. Pricing. Knowing the current prices of items is very important to me. The people pricing the items in thrift stores don't always know the value of certain items, and they're not paid very much, so they're not going to take the time to do a Google search before pricing the item. Usually they will guess. Sometimes they guess low, sometimes they guess high, so I like to check and see what the price is so that I'm not paying more for a used item than I would for a brand new one. When shopping for linens or clothing, I like to do my best to consolidate multiple purchases into one. Simply put, I look for the stuff. Does it have lining, batting, lace, trim, buttons, zippers, ribbon, cord. If I can find something with stuff on it, I'm getting more supplies with a single purchase. Take, for example, this set of curtains that I purchased for $7. A little steeper than what I would normally allow myself for curtains, but you see it came with buttons, and my plan was to make overalls. The last pair of overalls I made before that cost me $7 just for the buttons. The fabric was a $4 tablecloth, so the green curtain overalls were actually less expensive because they came with buttons included. So I determined the green curtains a good investment. Even if you're not going to use buttons, lace, trim, etc. for the same project, you can set it aside for a future one. For notions and embellishments, I don't limit myself to the craft section. If I can't find what I'm looking for there, I head over to the jewelry section, as you can cut up already made fabric items and make something completely different, so you can take some jewelry apart to embellish your piece. Patterns. Another way to save money is patterns, as in fewer patterns. I used to think I needed a new pattern for every single project that I took on. But I came to realize that there were actually only so many different shapes needed to create different garments. And I personally didn't need quite so many patterns. I could just have a few, and then if I wanted to make something slightly different, I would just modify the pattern a little bit. Save some money and save some space. Just like with patterns, I had to come to the realization that I didn't need every tool and machine out there. I may have wanted them, but I didn't need them. Be wary of those must-need sewing tool videos, because this is a very personal thing, I think, finding the tools that work for you. Even the simplest of tools, some people cannot hand sew without a thimble on their finger. I cannot sew with a thimble on my finger. I've tried and tried. It's not happening. I just kind of had to use trial and error and figure out what tools worked for me and what didn't. And anytime I could maybe borrow a tool before spending the money on it was really helpful, because then I could find out if it helped me or if it didn't, and if it was going to be a good investment. Multitasking, for want of a better word, is another way I make sewing worth it to me. I have invested in some machines, tools, supplies, and I can make my own clothing and other items, but I can also outsource my skill set and my machinery. I have made clothing for people, I have done alterations, and made items to sell in shops and online. So I invested in the tools not just for one use, but for multiple uses. Some help me to save money, and some help me to generate a little bit of an income. And the last thing is possibly the most important thing in terms of worth: time. It takes a good amount of time to sew even one item. So even if I am able to purchase fabric for little money, I still have to pay with the currency of time. In order to make it valuable to me, I have to keep the item for quite a while, which is not too difficult for me because I don't really enjoy shopping. And while I do enjoy the making, I don't want to be sewing every minute of every day and into the night. If I were to change my look, say every year or every season, it would not be worth it to me to sew my own clothing, because then I would be sewing all the time. I look at sewing as an investment, and the items that I make are part of that investment. So if I make an item for $20 and use that item for 10 years, then I am paying $2 per year to use that item. And that makes it worthwhile to me. So yeah, that was the long answer to the question. Is it possible to save money sewing your own items? Just a quick reminder that these are things that I do. These are things that work for me, my brain, my situation, and they're not necessarily going to be helpful for everyone. But I hope at least it inspired some ideas and encouraged you to remember that you and your situation are completely unique, and so the way you approach everything is going to be completely unique. And I think that's pretty freaking awesome.